Imagine there must have been 500-600 people on their knees. They almost looked like snails, if you will, traveling across the lawn. And then they go up the stairs, and then up the stairs, all the way down the aisle. And when they got there, they crawl all the way down.
Hi, Father Eagle. I'm Justin Green.
Justin,
I'll be interviewing you today. Do you think the conquistadors gave Spain a bad reputation, and why?
all those historical questions, it seems to me, have to be placed in a historical situation. If you were to ask in terms of our own present day, of course. But historically, culturally, back in their day, they saw themselves as much superior to the natives, and bringing them this the sense of the faith and also civilization and supposedly all its rewards. So, depends on what era you're talking about. In their own era, no. But in our area, certainly we would say that they did a grave disservice.
Second question. What is your opinion on the conversion, sometimes forced conversion, of Latin American Indians?
Well, again, as I mentioned in my first answer, the Spaniards and the priests that accompanied them, the Franciscans, the Jesuits, considered Christianity to be superior. For them, the natives were lost. They were unbaptized, and thus they would be condemned to hell. So what they thought was by converting them, even forced, they would be offering them the reward and possibility of heaven. Again, in our own day, with our notion of religious freedom, it's unacceptable.
Third question. What do you know about Our Lady of Guadalupe?
It's a remarkable story. As you may know, there was a poor peasant going to Mass one day, and a beautiful lady appeared to him, and it was her wish that a beautiful shrine would be built in her honor on that particular spot. To make a very long story shorter, several times the bishop, went to the bishop said, well, bring me a sign. But the peasant Juan Diego was so frightened of the whole situation, he tried to avoid the Virgin and went several different ways to church, but she always appeared there to him. And so finally he asked, well, the bishop won't accept me, I'm just a peasant, a Mexican peasant. And so she said, I will give you a sign. And she dropped her garment, this kind of overlapping poncho, and roses fell. Now it was December, so roses don't bloom. But on her mantle was left her image. And I've had the privilege of seeing on several occasions, both in the old cathedral in Mexico City and now in the new one, her portrait. What's amazing about the portrait, first of all, it has lasted this long, because these things are made of vegetable fiber and they don't last that long. And yet it's perfectly preserved. And secondly, she appears not as a Spaniard, but as a pregnant Indian woman. And so her whole identification, Mary's identification with the indigenous people, with the poor, and she's pregnant, ready to bring forth again Jesus to their world, not just the Spanish world.
Thanks for your time, Father.
Thank you for taking the time to do this interview with us.
Do you have a name?
I'm Jack Walsh.
Hey, the famous swimmer. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Did you take potassium too?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I don't swim,
Manners are
but
always good.
before interviews I take potassium.
So do you think that the conquistadors gave Spain a bad reputation, and why?
Absolutely. But depends who you're asking, right? So you're asking me. So I would say, yeah, they did, because in our modern era they were looked on as greedy land conquering people. So how else are you going to see them, But had their own mission. Some of the stuff they did was immoral, and I think that's how history should judge them.
And what is your opinion on the conversion, sometimes forced conversion, of Latin American Indians?
Well, I don't know much about the forced conversion. What I do know is that, ironically enough, and Mr. Jacket can verify this, I think it was the Dominicans, when I was doing some study, the Dominicans actually preached against some of the conquistadors' actions, which got them in trouble, and they didn't always like taking the friars along because they would preach against the mistreatment of the conquistadors, and people assumed that the church and the state were both in the same mission, and that's not the case. The church was like, when they found out of the treatment of the natives, they started, calling them out. And some of the conquistadors actually, I believe, okay, I'm not sure, might have killed some of the Dominicans. Now the Jesuit.
What do you know about Our Lady of Guadalupe?
Well, I know Father Eagle talked about her. I'll just add a few things. One is that the colors on the tilma, he said tunic, what is this? It's called the tilma, okay? Anyway, didn't exist at the time. You couldn't put the colors together to mix it. So the actual image was a miraculous image. They were like, how do you get these colors? Secondly, if you study the image, just have Mr. Jacket pull it up on Google, have him do something in class, right? You'll see there's this black sash, black, I don't know, it looks like a bow, okay? It's tied around her waist, which is a symbol in the indigenous culture that woman is expecting. So everyone kind of knew. So here you have a pregnant Virgin Mother, and you can see Juan Diego in her eyes. Like if you were to, people study this image like scrupulously.
Now, I want everybody to know, and they probably do, I'm not Catholic. I'm Protestant. I'm a retired Lutheran pastor.
Okay.
In our church, we cross ourselves. In your church, you cross yourselves. Every day we do that during morning prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that really means?
It's a representation of the Holy Trinity. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Okay. Try this. When God and me are in a good relationship, everything else in the world works. When God and me are in good relationship, everything else works. When God and me are in good relationship, all my relationships on earth work.